Some of you may know Nina Sankovitch is an avid reader and writer and blogs about all things about her books on her site readallday.org and is a regular contributor to the Huffington Post. She's leads a monthly book chat for all those who would like to go to a book chat at the Westport Public Library. All kinds of books are discussed in a lively group, and that's Tuesdays. The book chat is the first Tuesday of every month at 10 a.m. That's first thing in the morning. Her first book. Unfortunately, earlier than that, although I'd like to be a late riser. Her book, Tolstoy and the Purple Chair, was published by HarperCollins and was named Outstanding Debuts of 2011 by Kirkus, a beautifully fluid, reflective, and astute memoir by Booklist, and an entertaining bibliophile's dream. How wonderful is that? By Publishers Weekly. Her new book, actually, her paperback will be out June 19th, and she's working on a new book, which is going to be coming out next May 2013. So her books will be on sale tonight after our event. So please join her in talking to her about her new book and maybe purchasing one. Now, Tessa Smith McGovern, a friend of mine, is an award-winning short story writer and founder of eChook Digital. eChook publishes collections of short stories and memoirs for iPhone, iPad, Nook, and Kindle, and produces a series of chat shows on YouTube called Liquid Lunch, which is so much fun for book lovers. It's all about writers, and you can view it also on YouTube and also on booktrib.com. She teaches at Sarah Lawrence in Bronxville, as well as she has an online class and offers free worksheets and tips for writers at eChook.com. Let me see if I'm missing anything. This year's eChook's recent collection, Memoir Volume 1, was awarded the silver medal in the anthology category by the E-Lit Awards. So we have something for everybody here. E-books, regular books, shows, everything. Thanks so much for coming. I'm going to let the dialogue begin.
Thanks, Meryl. And if I may, I'd just like to suggest that if you haven't turned your phone off, you might like to. I always forget that. So Nina and I are friends, and this is a very intimate, a salon is where we get to hear from you, we get to hear your questions, and we want to know about you as well and what your interests are as we go through the evening tonight. We're going to chat for about 15 or 20 minutes and then open it up to your questions. So if you have some questions, please make a note of them, and when you ask them, we'd like to know your name, and we'd like to know if you're a writer. Please tell us what sort of writer you are. Could we have, just by a show of hands, how many writers do we have in the audience tonight? Don't be shy. Don't be shy. Great, okay. And how many people do we have who are interested in the topic of grief and healing? It's probably all of us, right? I mean, yeah. This is the thing about Nina's book. It is, let's have you tell us about, what is the book about, first of all?
Okay. First, I want to say you called us dialogues. I think we are salonistas.
Oh, how fabulous.
Yes, exactly. My book is Tolstoy and the Purple Chair, My Year of Magical Reading. And so it's an homage in some ways to Joan Didion's book, Year of Magical Thinking. And the impetus for the book, so to speak, is similar to what drove Joan Didion to write her memoir, which is that my oldest sister died. It was 7 years ago, and she was 46 when she died, so way too young. And Tolstoy and the Purple Chair is a story of what I did after my sister died. And the first thing I did for 3 years is that I ran away from the fact that she had died, from my fear, from my despair, from my anger, and I just became a very busy person. If my sister could not be alive, I was going to live a double life. And I took on everything that I could possibly take on in terms of PTA, doing for the kids, doing for my friends. And I got to a point where I realized I was very unhappy and still crying at night, and this was 3 years after my sister died. And what I did is, at that point, I realized I had to do something else, and I think it's great that we're here at this Playhouse, because what I did is I turned to art. And I think so many people turn to art as a way of dealing with grief in their life. Whether it is the artist who turns to art, creating art as a way of dealing with their grief, or the people who go to participate in that work of art, whether it be a painting or a piece of music or a book or a play. The participants are also using that art to deal with some aspect of their life. And for me, I turned to books, and I turned to books in a big way. For a year, I read a book a day for a whole year. And it was an incredible year for me. And the books that I read were all over the range of genre. But it was the experience of reading and of having, through the books, being part of someone else's experience, not always of grief, although so many great books are about death and loss and sorrow. But through books, through the art of books, I was able to discover how to live again, how to live. By seeing how other people lived, I was able to understand again. Because after someone who you love dies, you really wonder, how do I go on? How do I keep living when this horrible thing has happened? And for me, I found the answer in books. There are people who find the answer in plays. There are people who find the answer in music, in paintings. But for me, it's so a world without that art, without artists willing to share, would be a very desolate place.
So perhaps we could just break down. You had a couple of different stages. You had 3 years after your sister died, and then you had a year of reading, and then you began to write the memoir.
Right.
So I'm interested in, and if any of it, do we have any memoir writers here? Memoir? No, quite a few. I'm interested in how is the process of healing affected? You know, how is the process of healing affected by those? There were 3 things: the very busyness, then the finding the books, and then writing a review every day after you'd read the book, and then the memoir itself. So can you speak a bit about?
Well, during the year of reading, I did write every day. I wrote a review, but not a typical review, you know, this is a good book, you should read it. I wrote sort of my visceral response to that book and what I might have learned from that book, or what pleasure I might have found in that book, or what escape, because some books are pure escape, and that's a good thing. It's good to escape sometimes. And towards the end of my year of reading, a publisher came to me and said they wanted to do a book about the year of reading. And I really was not sure how this could be a book, because everything was on my website. All the books I'd read, I kept sort of an online journal about how things were developing in my own mind with my grief and my sorrow. But I realized that in writing the book, I could write a book about my sister. And I could write a book about my family. And I could create a piece of work that other people could come to and find. First of all, they would find that it was not a crazy thing to read a book a day, because there are 2 camps.
It's a little crazy.
Well, no. When I tell people I read a book a day for a year, there are 2 reactions. There's the "you're crazy," and the other reaction, which is quite common, is "that is my dream." A lot of people do understand.
Yes.
But my book, Tolstoy and the Purple Chair, explains why it was not crazy for me, coming from the background that I have and having always turned to books for answers.
Nina can read 70 pages in an hour.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah, so that, and we can talk about that later, about how I picked the books, but then the writing was as important for me in coming to terms with how to live again as the reading was, because I started to really pull together all the different lessons that I learned, and I also came to really appreciate the people that were in my life who had helped me, my family and friends and people who came to my website Because what was interesting about my year, and again this ties into what we're doing here tonight, I thought I was going to have a very solitary year of reading, that I would be at home reading my books and I would be alone. I had more conversations with different kinds of people during that year than I've ever had before. Even with my neighbors who would always, we were always, hi, how are you?
Because of the books.
But they would say, what did you read today? And I'd start talking. And then we would talk about anything. Because when you talk about books or you talk about a play, you can talk about anything at all. And this was how art can seem sometimes like it's a very solitary experience. You look at a painting, you hear music, you sit in a dark theater and watch a play or a movie. But in fact, it can be a very communal experience because of the talking, which is what you were talking about. The talking about it really deepens and amplifies the experience.
Yes. And how did you choose the books?
Well, I can read about, as you said, 7-8 pages an hour, so that's 200 to 300 page book. That I had slotted out for myself about 6 hours a day for reading and writing. I was treating it as a job while my kids were at school. I get on the bus, sit down, write my reviews, start reading. So how I chose my books is I went to the Westport Public Library and I looked for books that were an inch thick.
I thought it was something very clever about there's grief in this one, there's this in that one, but it was...
Well, and I looked for covers I liked or authors that I knew or books that had been recommended to me. And I brought home armloads of books because this was my year to do what I wanted to do. If I was 10 pages into a book and it was not working for me, I put it down, which was a great lesson to learn. We are out of school. We're not being assigned books anymore. If you're not enjoying a book, there's so many great ones out there, put it down. And I might have missed some gems. I really might have.
How many pages did you give it?
I didn't give it much, 10 or 20. And now I'll give a book a lot more time. But I discovered so many great books from authors I'd never heard of because I was just picking them off the shelf. And that was like every day was a gift to me.
Yeah. And so tell us something. There has to have been, with 4 children and a busy life, there has to have been some crunch, some kind of... Tell me about a disaster, is what I'm saying. I can't imagine. I'm so impressed by that you have 4 kids and you read a book a day.
Well, the disaster is that you have a whole day planned and then you get the call from the school nurse and all of a sudden your whole day is shot. And not only does that kid come home sick, but that kid comes home vomiting. And so that's a constant work, and that night I was up pretty late. But many nights I ended up being up pretty late because life does intervene, and this whole schedule I had for myself didn't work out. But that was nice too. I would be home, I'd be the only one awake, in my chair reading, and it was as if I had a play going on just for me.
Were you ever tempted to give up?
No, but I didn't tell that many people about my year before I started because I didn't want it to be this huge, oh, did you do it, did you do it? Right. But the days just went by, and my kids were great, my husband was great. We ate a lot of pizza that year, which was great. Our house got, kind of got a little messy. The kids got a whole list of chores, which we still stick to more or less. Yeah.
I'm so impressed by that. She just decided, wrote up. If I wrote this list, I'd be the only one who looked at it.
Well, it worked. And also I told the kids, they had all these activities as Fairfield County kids do, and I said, you have to pick one that you're going to do. I'm not driving all over for a year. And I always tell us, and it's so true, they all gave up their musical instrument. Really? Except for George, he kept with the tuba, because they were so happy. Oh, yeah, I'll get rid of that. And we spent a lot of time at home together. It was a year we were all home together a lot, and it was wonderful.
The other thing that's really impressive about that is how you had the strength to set those boundaries around something that was not publicly announced. It wasn't a public work. You weren't getting paid for it. It wasn't... Was that easy, or...?
Since I had so much support from the family, and they saw that I needed it, and they also saw within a month or two I was feeling better, I was doing better, I was getting back to the person they had known, I was recovering joy. And one of the lessons that I learned during my year was how we live in these cycles of joy and sorrow, and books showed me that, and my own life showed me that, and conversations that I had with people showed me that. but there is a power that we have to let the joy prevail, to say, I remember I was happy once, I'm going to be again, this is going to get better.
Even if it doesn't look like it right now.
Right.
One thing I have to say is that Nina's memoir it's about her sister's death, but it's as uplifting as you could possibly wish for, and as a memoir about grief could possibly be. And there's, even from the very first page, there is something to feel glad about. And I wondered if, for the memoirists in the audience, was that a conscious decision? Did you want to structure it like that, or was it simply, the serendipity of just you wrote the story? And
yeah, it was not a conscious decision. I think in writing about the year, and I didn't want it to be chronological, I wanted it to go by themes, all the different themes that I discovered in the reading and how that brought me back to finding joy. I think that the way that I realized for myself, yes, and it was a horrible thing, and it will never not be a horrible thing, but what came out of it was this ability to see life in a more full way.
Yeah.
And I'd like to say, the lessons learned, I went on and life has been peachy keen since. What is so funny about humans is we can learn a lesson and then we need to learn it again and again and again and again.
So
that's where art plays such a huge role. We need to be reminded about how important it is to show kindness to others, how important it is to remember the past. We need to be reminded of that. That was one of the first lessons I learned, was how I had to allow myself to look backwards and remember my sister and hold her in my heart while I was moving forwards. And I found that in books. And I can still today, I can be going through a bad period, and the right book will pick me right up again. And in fact, my husband will say to me, you've been really cranky lately. Only cranky may not be the word. You've been really cranky lately. Have you not read a good book lately? I say, yeah, you're right. I haven't read a good book lately. So,
I do find if I don't read something meaningful for a while, I begin to feel like I've been on a diet of junk food.
Yeah.
With Facebook and I love ebooks, but they're not the only thing. We need our proper stories.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So, would you tell us a little bit about the editing? How did that work?
Well, I was a very small fish in the pond of HarperCollins. So editing was not I was not a big person they were interested in editing, but in a way that meant I was left alone a lot, which was really good. And after the first round of the book, I actually showed it to my parents. Since it's so much about my family, I wanted to make sure. And they were like, no, this is good. This is good. So then.
So there was no major restructuring of any of the content?
No, they kept saying, put a quote in, in the beginning, at the head of every chapter there are quotes, and I actually love that they're in there now, but they were taken in, taken out, taken in, taken out. That was the big
Well, for the writers amongst us, does that not seem very unfair, right? Doesn't it? Because that seems like you wrote it and then did a little bit of polishing, and that's really your voice, and that's how you speak, and so there really wasn't much of a need.
But I think since I wrote every single day during the year of reading, that I was comfortable with writing in my voice.
Right. Yes, yeah.
It's when you do something every day, you become comfortable with it.
So the blog was good practice,
the
book reviews.
It was.
Yeah.
It was, Ray Bradbury had that famous line, you have to write every day, and he would write 1,000 words a day. And if someone had said to me, you have to sit down and write every day, I probably couldn't have done it, but because I had a project to do it, my own project, I did do it every single day. I wrote every day about the book I read the day before, and that helped me.
It's been 7 years now. Can you speak a little bit about what you think today would be like for you if you had not done the year of reading and you had not written a memoir? Would you be in the same place? How much was it the passage of time, and how much was it the act of writing the memoir?
I think that I would still be somewhat of a mess if I hadn't sat down and allowed myself to think about what had happened and allowed myself to focus on one activity. It's that focus. You know, there's some people who will turn to some other like they'll train for a marathon. Well, that was not going to happen for me. Or they'll decide to become a really good cook. That was not going to happen for me. But for books, it was very natural for me to sit down and focus on a book. And it is that taking the time to make space for yourself, to do something for yourself, that it's very, very important. And I don't know if, you know, going on Facebook for an hour is not the same experience, and it's not going to do the same thing for you. So for me, but as I was saying earlier, you know, that I still need to learn so many lessons again and again. So I still turn to books again and again.
To be reminded.
Of the lessons that I learned.
And one thing that was very sweet was that you began by rereading some of the books you knew that Anne-Marie had loved.
Well, our books, actually, you know, with Anne-Marie and I, we had very similar tastes, but one of my rules for the year was I couldn't read any book I'd ever read before, and I couldn't read any author more than once. So every day was a new author. And so what I found is I was discovering authors that I knew she would have loved. If we had discovered them together, she would have loved them. And then there were some old sort of classics, and I know she recommended them to me that I hadn't read. Like The Bridge of San Luis Rey, I had never read. That is a great book. That is really a great book. So I did discover, and Captain's Courageous I had never read. I love that. So it was a book of really, a year of really discovering new things. And so many of them, I thought, oh, Anne-Marie would have loved this.
And I know we have your husband and your mom and your dad in the audience. Was the response from your family positive across the board? Because sometimes that's a difficulty when you're writing memoir, even though you did run it past them first. Did everybody love it? Did everyone have the same response?
They were very positive. One of my sons can be quite critical, and he said, if you're going to read, you better read something good. And he handed me Watership Down, which is like 400 pages. But I did end up reading that in one day. That was a day where I fed them breakfast, shut the door to my room, and didn't come out till dinner time. And that was a great book. He was right. 500
pages. I do have to take issue with the fact that you said Wind in the Willows was dull. Sorry. Wind in the Willows with Toad down by the riverbank. No, that's so. No, that's funny. Yeah. Okay, so now, would you like to tell us a little bit about what you're working on at the moment?
Sure, I would love to, and then we can open up to questions. Well, during my year of reading, and then in the years since then, people ask me, you know, is the book dead? And I can say absolutely emphatically, no, the book is not dead. There are new books being written that come out every day. There are great new books coming out, and I meet readers every day. The book chat at the library, so many people come. And I get people to my website giving me recommendations. So really, books are not dead. The topic that I'm working on now, which is letters, the writing of letters, that is kind of facing extinction. And my book may not revive letters, but it will certainly provide, I hope, testimony to the vitality of letters and the importance of writing something out in a letter to somebody that you care about. And I think there were a couple of different things that sparked this book for me. One is that about a long time ago now, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, I discovered in the backyard of a house where I lived in New York, a trunk full of letters, old letters written around the turn of the century, and I mean the 19th to 20th century. And they were all the letters that a boy wrote to his mother over a period of about 40 years, from the time he was 3 till the time that she died. She died in the late 1930s. And he was a very nice boy, and he wrote often to his mother. He was at Princeton from 1908 to 1912, and he wrote to his mother 2 to 3 times a day on little postcards that he would put in the mail. Went twice a day, so she would get letters, twice a day. And these letters, when I first found them, I was a young mother, little kids, and I just thought I had a little crush on him. I just thought he was this great guy, really had a lot of fun, and he just seemed like a wonderful guy. When I reread the letters about a year ago, my maternal side came out, I thought, he is such a nice boy.
We have kids who've just graduated from Staples and gone off to college. So
Right.
we
So
were
for
talking.
me, I thought, is my son going to write to me once or twice a day? And guess what?
wishing.
You know, my son did not write to me.
That was the plan.
Yeah, so I really realized that I knew so much about this man and about his family through these letters, and I started reading my own family letters, and other people started giving me their letters, and there are great collections of letters out there that other friends have been sharing with me. And what I'm realizing is that so many of the qualities of a good letter are also the qualities of a good relationship. That you bother to take the time to have a detailed, personal, private, very unique conversation with a person, not a generic. I mean,
And not so easy today.
right.
You know, everything is so busy and we're all so rushed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm working on now, a book about letters, and it will come out next year from Simon & Schuster, and I have wonderful editors who I love, and so I think it's going to, but it doesn't have a title yet, so maybe I should have a title contest.
Yes,
Because
send them to readallday.com.
Org.
Org, sorry, beg your pardon, if you have any suggestions.